This year marks the 75th anniversary of the Battle of Britain. In the summer of 1940, with the imminent threat of attack from Germany, Prime Minister Winston Churchill was determined we wouldn't be defeated. He rallied the nation with one of the most powerful weapons in his armoury: words.
On the 18th of June, Churchill delivered a speech to galvanise the nation for the brutal battle ahead, read today by veterans who took part in the war effort.
Well, this is the original Battle of Britain hangar at Duxford, and in here are some of the aircraft that actually took part. And here to tell us all about it is Carl Warner. Now, this is a Hurricane. Explain the role that the Hurricane played during the Battle of Britain.
The Hurricane was one of the RAF's two main fighters in the Battle of Britain. The Spitfire is obviously more famous, but what the Hurricane did was it provided the Royal Air Force with numbers. It was easier to build than the Spitfire, so of course there were more Hurricanes, and of course they actually shot down more aircraft than any other aircraft in the battle. And
in terms of performance, what was it like?
It was a great workhorse. It was able to take on the bombers, so the slower flying bombers, and indeed it did tangle with German fighters and often came off best. But it didn't have quite the same performance as the Spitfire. The Spitfire is what gave the RAF that sort of performance edge in the Battle of Britain as well.
Now, you mentioned German fighters because we've got one over here.
Yes, this is the Messerschmitt Bf 109, so this is the main single-seat fighter that was used by the Germans in the Battle of Britain. And
it crashed in England?
It did. This one is a classic example of one of the many reasons why the Battle of Britain was won by the RAF. Of course, it crashed, its pilot became a prisoner. When Hurricanes and Spitfires crashed, frequently their pilots were back in action that afternoon.
So that made a huge difference.
It did. It kept fighter numbers up, and it's one of the key problems with attacking over a foreign country. You tend to lose your guys. This particular aircraft actually went on a tour, a fundraising tour of North America. So it was used to drum up support for the war effort, the British war effort. And in fact, people would pay to see it, and quite a lot of them scratched their names into the wing of the aircraft.
During the war, really?
During the war, yeah. So prior to America's entry and just after America's entry, trying to drum up that support for the British war effort, to remind the Americans that, you know, they should come in on the right side. And
it was a good plane, though, wasn't it? I mean, you could see what the Spitfires and the Hurricanes were up against.
It was a very successful fighter. The problem was the Germans didn't have enough of them. They needed many, many, many more aircraft than they had to actually, if they were going to win the Battle of Britain. So despite it being a very well-performing aircraft, the RAF was always able to remain in being and not get shot down in the numbers that the Germans needed.
I've just heard a plane take off here at Duxford. Just give us an idea what it would have been like here during the Battle of Britain.
Well, Duxford's still a living airfield, so you can still see examples of these types taking off. But during the Battle of Britain, Duxford was essentially responsible for the defence of the Midlands, but it also helped out with the defence of London. So a lot of fighters were concentrated here. So on some days you would see up to 60 aircraft taking off from Duxford and its little satellite station at Falmere to head down to London to help with the defences.
Must have been incredible. Carl, thank you.
Thank you.
One of my favourite exhibits here at Duxford is this, the Lancaster bomber. John Sargent is still here, and I know you're fascinated by these incredibly majestic planes.
They are. Kids nowadays talk about things being awesome, but that really is awesome, isn't it? And what's amazing is that when I was a child looking at these things, you didn't associate it with death and destruction. You just looked at the plane and you thought, this is just so... well, it's so cool, isn't it? It's just so beautifully designed. And to think this big thing will go up into the air, carrying all these people, just in a very simple way. Can a plane do that? And can they do it with such sort of fortitude and with all the ack-ack guns going off around them, and this thing is flying through the night? I just thought then, and I think now, awesome.
But they must have been incredibly frightening for the crew on board.
They were. And, you know, a lot of them, of course, would be killed. And a lot of them couldn't communicate very well because there's the rear gunner, so there are 7 in all. Then there's the gunner here in the middle position, but they're very vulnerable below here. So you've got the navigator, you've got various people there, but there's not much contact.
You met earlier this year a woman called Elaine Towson, whose father, Stan Shaw, flew one of these Lancaster bombers in the war, and she told you all about that, about his experience. Let's have a look.